My name is Karl, and I'm a graduate student at the University of Albany. I've done this work on the large-scale influences of the genesis of Hurricane Karl with my colleagues Lance Bozart and Mike Ventries. We're looking at the initial genesis of the disturbance that became Hurricane Karl as part of the field campaign Predict back in the fall of 2010. Initially we observed some anomalous southerly flow off of the northern South American continent, which we weren't entirely sure where this came from or how often it occurred. But what we did observe was that the southerly flow fed into easterlies that increased with latitude, which was a region of cyclonic shear, and this promoted the genesis or the development of cyclonic vorticity. So what we see here is that a number of this vorticity actually did increase in the days following this southerly flow. However, we didn't know, again, why this southerly flow existed, so we wanted to look at this in a little bit better perspective. And after a little bit of exploring the mid-latitudes, we saw that there was no mid-latitude trough in the southern hemisphere that could induce such southerly flow. And as we poked around further, we found that a Kelvin wave was actually could be associated with this anomalous flow. Kelvin waves, which have low-level westerly wind anomalies behind them and low-level easterly anomalies ahead of it, would actually produce a dynamical situation where this type of flow was possible. When you put these low-level westerly anomalies associated with a convectively active phase of the Kelvin wave into background easterly flow, you get reduced, if not negligible, zonal flow at that location, which would leave just the meridional component of the flow, which is what we observed over northern South America at that time. We also noticed in observations that the Kelvin wave, through a couple of time series of radio salon stations from northern South America, that these features did exist and could be observed as low-level westerlies increased with height over time as they passed. It was also interesting to note that the vorticity associated with Karl could not be traced further back prior to the passage of the Kelvin wave, indicating that this disturbance did not come from an easterly wave, and that some portion of the vorticity could actually, or of the genesis of the disturbance itself, could be attributed to the Kelvin wave's passage. However, we haven't done such attribution studies, so that would be a bit of a reach, but it's an interesting association nonetheless. The final component of what we were looking at here was the southerly flow off of South America. Did that help or hurt the disturbance? And while we're just looking at that in the preliminary stages right now, what we see is mid-level subsidence, or mid-level parcels subside slowly and get funneled by the terrain of northern South America through the Orinoco River Valley of Venezuela and eventually make their way into the Caribbean. Now, whether or not these parcels help to enhance the moisture or perhaps provide a detriment to the moisture, since this is a well-known region of tropical cyclogenesis minimum, remains to be seen. But we're going to be doing a lot more work with this in the future.